Welcome to the MMHP in the 989, channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history. Recorded live inside the Rock Legends Hall of Fame in Bay City, Michigan. Featuring Dr. J, Sir Fred, Mr. Mike, and your host, Scott Baker.
Okay, well, here we are. Once again from the Michigan Rock and Roll Legends studio at the Historical Museum of Bay County with a very, very special guest today, Mr. Peter Madcat Ruth. Welcome, Peter.
All right, glad to be here.
Wow, okay, we're very honored. I think you may be our first Grammy-winning guest.
Yeah,
could be.
I think so. I can't remember anybody else that won a Grammy that we've had on.
no,
Okay.
a lot of nominations, but this is the first winner.
Okay, yes. Well, we usually like to go back. We know that you were born in Illinois, right?
That's correct.
And how did you get introduced to the blues?
Oh, well, okay, I grew up in Park Ridge, Illinois. Born in Evanston, Illinois, but grew up in Park Ridge, Illinois, which is just the northwest side of Chicago. And my first introduction to music, what really caught my ear and caught my attention was the Kingston Trio. I was just crazy about the Kingston Trio when they first came out in 1950.
I was a big fan, too.
59, so I was 10 years old, and I heard Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley, and all that.
Yeah, that was the
so
first
this is
one.
great. So I started listening to, there was a show on an FM station. The FM stations were pretty rare back then, but there was an FM station called WFMT in Chicago, and it was classical music almost the whole time, but on Saturdays they had a folk music show. And so, oh, wow, they're going to play the Kingston Trio. And then they were playing, Peter, Paul, and Mary, and playing Bob Dylan and all this sort of stuff. And I love this folk music. That was the folk music revival, and I just got swept up in it. I loved it. And then I started hearing like Brownie McGee and Sonny Terry and Mississippi John Hurt and stuff. And whoa, I really like that. And
So did Sonny Terry kind of inspire your interest in the harmonica?
100%.
Well, of course, Dylan might have also.
Well, no, I didn't. I didn't think he was that great of a harmonica player. Although, what he did on harmonica, fit the songs and everything. But when I heard Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee, I said, "Oh my God, that's I have to learn how to do that." When I first heard that, and I was 15 years old when I first heard Sonny Terry on the radio, and I went out and, my dad had one harmonica, and he'd play his one harmonica about 10 minutes a year. So he had a Marine Band harmonica in the key of B flat. So he'd play things like, just campfire folky songs, and
Right.
and as I say, he'd play it 5 minutes twice a year, and that was it, But I knew he had that harmonica, and so I went out and I got a record called "Folk Music at Newport," and I brought it home, and it was a collection of a lot of people that played it, and there was 2 songs by Brownie McGee and Sonny Terry. And I got it. I get my dad's harmonica, and I got it out. And on one song, it sounded terrible, and on the other song, I could just go. And now, because on that one song, Sonny Terry was using a Marine Band harmonica in the key of B flat, and so when I just, great, I can play harmonica. And that was 61 years ago, and I never stopped.
Okay,
Incredible.
But you took it to the next level, right? You formed a band.
Oh yeah, well I was
A duo, sort of like Sonny and Brown.
Right. I guess my first band was when I was still in high school was the Petey Tweety band, because there's two of us. My name is Peter Ruth, and the other guy was Peter Swinnerton, and so we called ourselves the Petey Tweety band, and I think we called ourselves Petey Tweety Underground Experimental Band or something like that, because we were playing some strange combinations of stuff.
So this would have been, that sounds like a band name from the late 60s, you know,
yeah, well, it was
like the Chocolate Watch Band.
Yeah, it was, by then it was the mid 60s. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But we had played ukulele, and I played ukulele. He played flute and sax. He played guitar. I played guitar. I played harmonica. I played penny whistle. You know, just
So what were you guys playing? Were you playing like the folk hits of the day?
Yeah, we were doing folk music and whatever we wanted.
And where did you?
Were
there coffee houses?
Yeah, it was like church basements. You know,
okay.
And just you know, church youth groups. Mm-hmm. We only did like 3 gigs ever, but we rehearsed.
That's awesome.
Had a good time.
Well, you know, the big question I've been kind of waiting to ask you is, how in the world did you somehow get to have lessons from Big Walter Horton? Is that a big jump from the Petey Tweety band to well, obviously, right, in terms of you know, your teacher and so on, but was that a couple years later, or?
Yeah, let me see. It was in
he was a lot in Ann Arbor, I know.
Yeah, well, I met him before he went to Ann Arbor. So,
okay.
So I was, first of all, interested in the acoustic blues, folk blues, and I was listening to Mississippi John Hurt and Fred McDowell, and you know, the guys played folk music, and then and like the only harmonica player in that folk blues thing was Sonny Terry. So I just listened to Sonny Terry the first couple of years I played harmonica. Oh, and I was crazy about Sonny Terry because he would do this hooting and hollering thing.
Whoa.
And so I just was playing, only listening to Sonny Terry, and he was my sole harmonica inspiration for a couple of years. And then I went down to a place in downtown Chicago called the Jazz Record Mart. And
Bob
Kester's store. And I went in there one day and I said, you know, I really like blues and I like harmonica. Can you recommend anything? And he said, well, it just happens that 1965, or 66, I'm not sure, the Junior Wells Hoodoo Man Blues had just come out. And I got one when it
Me too.
When it was about a month old, you know, and I got that. It's back when it still said
Dusty Chap.
With guitar, friendly chap on guitar.
Oh yeah,
because Buddy Guy was under contract with Chess, so they couldn't put Buddy Guy on the record. Later they got permission and they put his name on it, but that first record I had, it said friendly chap on guitar. But anyway, whoa, I just loved that record. I went back the next week. You have anything else? And I got the best of Little Walter. Oh. And then Chicago, the Blues Today, a 3-album set with Walter Horton and Junior Wells and James Cotton. And and it was in probably October of 66. I was going to this Unitarian youth group in Oak Park, Illinois. And because I thought they were cooler than the people in my hometown church. And they said, let's have a blues weekend. I thought, this is my kind of people, you know. They're going to have a whole Saturday devoted to playing blues. I said, okay, great. And they said, well, let's everyone chip in, $2 or something. You know, that's the price of a harmonica.
Yeah, back then.
But anyway, we all chipped in some money, and they sent some envoy down to Jazz Record Mart again and said to Bob Kester, we have this much money. Who can we get? We want Junior Wells and Buddy Guy, but they said, no, you can't afford them. But how about for this much money, we could send you Johnny Young and Walter Horton. So, yeah, we'll take it. So Johnny Young and Walter Horton came and played in a church basement. And they had this skinny little white drummer with them, kind of a surly looking guy that dressed in black and was, I thought, I knew Big Walter Horton because of the Chicago the Blues Today, and I knew who Johnny Young was because Chicago the Blues Today, and they had this young drummer. And it wasn't until many years later I found out that was Iggy Pop playing drums. And he was like 18 at the time or something. But anyway, I heard Big Walter Horton. I was already a fan because I'd been playing that Chicago the Blues Today and wearing it out, And I heard him tell someone else, and someone said, do you give lessons? He said, yeah, I give lessons. And Walter Horton gives lessons. Wow. And I was like, and he said, yeah, well, just talk to Bob Kester at Jazz Record Mart. And so, okay, that was in October. And it took me to the next April to get up my nerve. But I went back to Jazz Record Mart and said, I want to take lessons from Walter Horton. He said, well, he doesn't have a phone, but he hangs out at Lincoln's grocery store on the corner of 39th and Indiana, and just keep calling until you get him. So I call up, and, Big Walter Horton there? No, he ain't here. Okay. And he called up, a couple of days later, it's Big Walter Horton. No, it's not here. No, he's not. And then about the fourth or fifth call, oh, yeah, he's here. Hold on. And gets on the phone. I said, I want to take a lesson. He said, okay, I'll meet you here at Lincoln's grocery store Saturday at 1 in the afternoon. Okay. So I went down to Lincoln's grocery store, and I walked in and says, Walter Horton here? And no, he's not here. and someone else says, oh, you're looking for Shaky Walter? Oh, he's not here. And then this old lady, she seemed like she was 90 years old. She says, you're looking for tall Walter? He's not here. But he finally came in, and he said, you want a lesson? Oh, yeah, I'll give you a lesson. You got to pay me in advance. So, okay. Paid him in advance, and he bought a bottle of something, and I don't know what it was. I should have paid more attention. It was a fifth-size bottle. And then we walked about a block and a half down Indiana Avenue and up to his 3 flights of stairs to his apartment on the 3rd floor. And he sat at one end of the kitchen table, and I was at the other side of the kitchen table. And says, you have a harp? And I got out a harp, and he looked at it. Oh, that's a C harp. And so he got a C harp, and he goes, you do it. Okay. No. He didn't even say you do it this time. He just pointed at me. Yeah. No. And the entire lesson was you do it and no. But he wouldn't. So he'd do that first lick, 5 or 6 times. Then he said, okay. You do it. No. And so the entire lesson was you do it and no. And I was just like in awe because this huge sound was coming out of this guy on the other side of a kitchen table. And when you hear it on a record, you think, well, maybe there's some recording technique, or maybe it's the reverb, or maybe it's something. But his tone was so big and so huge. And so after a while, I said, well, lesson's over. Okay. I had no idea how long it was. Zero. I don't know if it was 15 minutes, if it was an hour. I have no idea because I was just overwhelmed. So then I went home and just played along with Chicago, the Blues Today, played along with Walter Horton and with Junior Wells and with James Cotton, and played to the other, and got my little Walter record out and played along with that. And I just played harmonica all the time when I should have been doing my homework.
So you kind of figured it out on your own?
Oh, yeah, because he
didn't really show you the technique.
He never said anything. He never said, inhale on hole 3 and bend it down a half step. Nothing like that. Just. So I went home and I woodshedded, for 6 months, and came back 6 months later and took another lesson, and it was the same. You meet him at, you call up on Lincoln's grocery store, you meet him there, you pay in advance, go to his apartment. But by then, I was way better than the first lesson because I'd been just playing all the time. And so it was the same thing, You do it? No.
You didn't get any yes?
No. It wasn't until the third lesson, which was like 6 months after the second lesson. It was like the April of the next year. So that would have been, let's see, 67. Yeah, April of 68 was my third and last lesson, or probably May of 68. And but by then he was playing things like, well, do this. Okay, you do it, I was getting closer. But so then again he says, okay, that's it. And so I was about to leave, and I hear on the door, and it's a friend of his that came over, and the friend says, "Hey, what you doing, Walter?" And he said, "I just been giving this kid a lesson." And he said, "Well, let me hear him play." So Walter says, "Play him something." So I played him something. I don't know what. He said, "Yeah, that's pretty good." He said, then the friend said, "Did you teach him how to play that?" And he said, "Yep." Yeah, I taught him how to play. I taught him how to play like that. And then he said, "Well, before he took lessons from you, could he play anything?" And he said, "Yeah, he could play. But what he was playing wasn't worth shit." Anyway, that's how I met Walter Horton.
That's a great story.
Did Walter talk about any other harp players in town, harmonica players, or did he have any inspiration to tell you, or did you just sit and had a lesson and it was?
Yeah, he didn't talk much to me at all.
Okay.
Weren't you managed and booked by James Cotton's manager? Or
yeah, that was much later. It was,
okay.
But it was Junior Wells'
Marty
manager.
Somebody?
It was Marty Salzman.
That's it.
And when I was with Madcat and Kane, but that was decades later. Yeah. And yeah, he booked us for a while, and that was great.
Well, that was you brought back some memories when you were talking about Bob Kester. When I interviewed Michael Erlewine, he had a lot to say about Bob Kester, and he couldn't stop talking. This is about Hoodoo Blues, that record, and how influential that was for him.
Hoodoo Man Blues was amazingly influential.
Yeah. And I didn't know anything about it, but I went back and after talking to him, bought the album. And it's pretty impressive. I mean, even
also,
so many years later.
Yeah. And all the other records that had come out at that time, like the Best of Little Walter and the Muddy Waters records and the Howlin' Wolf records, were all collections of singles that were put on an LP. Mm-hmm. But Hoodoo Man Blues was the first record where it was like a concept record. We're going to do a whole album of live takes of this band. And they didn't have to be just three minutes long. They could stretch out a little bit. And it was the first time any blues record was ever recorded with the intention of just, we're going to record this band and do a whole album all at once. So
yeah, and it had a great sound too. Yeah. It was just like, boy, you're listening to it and you feel like you're almost in a room with them. It was really an excellent record. Now, I was surprised that you were kind of a rock and roller in the early days. In this, we're getting into the New Heavenly Blue.
Yeah. Well,
in meeting Dave Brubeck's son.
Yeah, right. So after I took some lessons from Walter Horton, and it was probably 1968 that in the fall I started a band. I joined a band called the Stanley Moss Blues Band, and it was definitely, we were doing blues covers, and so I played with that band for I don't know, at least a half year or so. And so I was, I considered myself, I wasn't all that interested in rock and roll, but I loved blues. And also at the same time that the first Junior Wells Hoodoo Man Blues album came out, it was almost, a month before or a month after the first Paul Butterfield Blues Band record came out. And I got that. And that was great too. I loved that. And so then there was these blues bands starting around Chicago, and that's when I joined the Stanley Moss Blues Band. And very soon after those first two records came out, I think the third blues band album to come out was probably Corky, the Siegel Schwall Band. And it wasn't until a few years later I got to know Corky, but we're still very good buddies.
So how did you hook up with Dave Brubeck's son?
Well, in the same youth group in Oak Park, Illinois, I had a friend going to Oak Park High School, and she called me up, and this was in the spring of 1968, and she says, there's these musicians from Interlochen Arts Academy that are playing at Orchestra Hall. They're playing a classical concert, but they're going to have and they're staying at people's houses. All the musicians in the orchestra were being put up by students of the Oak Park High School, families of the orchestra at the Oak Park High School, because the Oak Park High School orchestra director and the Interlochen orchestra director were good friends, and so they arranged that. Mm-hmm. They just, rather than try to pay for hotels for all these kids, they could put them up for free in people's houses. So my friend played clarinet in that orchestra, and she called me up and said, there's these musicians and they're going to play at Orchestra Hall in Chicago, but after the concert, they're going to come to my house and have a jam session. And why don't you come over? I said, great, I'll come over. So I jammed with the members of New Heavenly Blue, and they were still all students at Interlochen Arts Academy Interlochen, Michigan.
Had they started the band at that point?
Yeah, they'd already started the band
Okay.
in high school, yeah. And we had a really fun jam session. And as we were leaving, Chris Brubeck, so I was, let me see, 68, I was 19 at the time. And Chris Brubeck was 16 at the time. And Chris Brubeck says to me, "Oh man, what a great jam session. I want to get your name and your phone number and your address." I said, "Okay." And I wrote down my name and my phone number and my address and gave it to him. He said, "Oh man, this is great. A year from now, I'm going to graduate from Interlochen." And because he was a year advanced, and he was only 16, but he graduated at age 17. He said, "A year from now, I'm going to put a band together. We're going to make a demo record. We're going to put out a record, and we're going to tour." And and when you're 19 and a 16-year-old is telling you all this stuff, you say, "Yeah, sure." Kind of rolling my eyes. So here's my name and my contact information. And I left that jam session thinking, what a dreamer.
Yeah.
I'll never see that. It was a fun jam session, but I'll never see that kid again.
Did you know he was Dave Brubeck's son?
Yeah, I've
okay.
been told he was Dave Brubeck's son. But still, I thought he was a dreamer. I'll never see him again. But sure enough, a year later, I get this letter. And at the time, I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And my mother forwarded it down to Albuquerque. And the letter says, "Okay, it's May 1969, and in June 1969, I'll be graduating from Interlochen, and we're going to make a demo tape at the Interlochen radio station, and why don't you come up and join the band?" So, wow. Maybe he wasn't kidding.
Yeah.
And so I hitchhiked from Albuquerque, New Mexico to Chicago and then up to Interlochen, and we made the demo recording.
So is this what led to the first album,
Yeah.
Educated Homegrown?
Yeah, this was the demo recording, and then, okay, see you guys later. I hitchhiked back to Chicago. and later that summer, that was in June of 69. In August of 69, he calls me up again and says, "Guess what? There's a record producer in Hollywood, California that liked our demo, and he's going to give us free studio time. All we have to do is get to Hollywood." So
Well, you were a little closer, at least for Hollywood, right? From Albuquerque?
No, I left Albuquerque when I left at that point, but they said, "We're going to meet at the guitar player's house in Denver to rehearse for a few days." So, okay. So I hitchhiked from Chicago to Denver and joined the band, rehearsed a few days, and then we all flew standby to Hollywood. And it was a place called the Sound Factory. And the young producer was named Juddy Phillips. He was the nephew of Sam Phillips of Sun Records.
Okay.
And he'd learned how to operate this equipment by working at Sun Records. And the Sound Factory, this is, again, 1969. The first 16-track machines in the world were in 1968, or maybe 67. In 1969, there was like 5 of them in the United States, and one of them was in the Sound Factory in Hollywood. So we flew out there, and Juddy would work all day doing, just as our engineer at the place, but he'd have free use of the studio at night. So we'd go in and like midnight or 1 in the morning and record till 5 in the morning or something. And we made a demo, a professional demo tape, and that was sold then to RCA. And so some of the things we recorded in Hollywood were used on that record, and the other things were recorded in Chicago at RCA studios, and they had another one of the first 16-track machines. So that was kind of mind blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was wild.
Now that was your first time
that was-
recording, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
I read somewhere that the first 16-track machine went to California out to Frank Zappa's the studio that he used, which probably was that studio then or something.
I don't know if there were so few of them back then. Like less than 10 in the United States.
I read a story. I was in it was just on recording, and they were talking about how California was the first place to get them. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Did you ever end up jamming with any of those Chicago guys that you talked about after Walter and all them, like Paul Butterfield or anybody? Or Little Walter or any of those guys?
So that was 1969 that we made this recording.
Yeah.
And then in the summer of 1970, New Heavenly Blue got a farm. We had a new guitar player by then, and his family had a farmhouse near Ann Arbor. And so for the summer of 1970, the whole band moved into that farmhouse, and we'd record and we'd rehearse, and we'd do free park concerts in Ann Arbor. And
did you get to know any of the rock acts that, like SRC or the guys in the MC5?
No, I didn't know those guys. I got to know Commander Cody and the Lost Planet Airmen back then. But that was there was a duo called Teagarden and Van Winkle. That I got to know those guys. But so I was there in the summer of 70, and then I went back to college until the spring of 71, and then I moved to Ann Arbor, and I've lived in Ann Arbor ever since. And so when I went back to Ann Arbor in 1972, the Blind Pig opened, and my wife actually was, when it was brand new and it had first opened, my wife was a waitress there. Oh. But all these Chicago blues acts would come and play at the Blind Pig. So
I remember.
And Walter Horton would show up, and he remembered me, and he'd let me sit in. And
oh, nice!
I remember Jimmy Walker, the piano player, bringing his own piano.
Ha! No kidding.
From Chicago.
Wow. And Johnny Shines played there, and
Hound Dog Taylor.
Yeah. So I got to meet some of those guys and sit in with some of those guys.
Did New Heavenly Blue play the Blind Pig?
No, we played other places in town, but not the Blind Pig. Because at that time, Blind Pig was just blues.
Oh, okay.
Now
tiny in the basement.
Oh, yeah, it was tiny. It was like the size of this room.
Yeah, it's bad. Yeah.
So, you recorded a second album with New Heavenly Blue, right?
Right. So the first album was on RCA Records, and it didn't particularly sell very well, so they dropped us. And at the time, Dave Brubeck had just recorded a record on Atlantic Records, and on one cut on that record, New Heavenly Blue backed up Dave Brubeck, and it's called, I guess that was called Two Generations of Brubeck. So somehow Chris was able to get an audition to play for the producers at Atlantic Records to see if they were interested. And we had mainly Chris Brubeck had written this rock opera that was like 40 minutes long. It was like the most ridiculous thing. And so they said, okay, you can come in, set up in the studio, and play us a couple songs, so we can hear what you sound like. So we set up, and we played the whole rock opera, 40 minutes, and they're like, what? What?
Wow.
What? But they could hear that we could play our instruments, and we had some crazy ideas, and They said, okay, we'll give you a contract, but you can't do the rock opera.
It'd be cool to hear nowadays that, on a CD, you can put it all on one now.
Yeah. So anyway, we got the second album contract on Atlantic, and they put it out, and it didn't sell very well, so they dumped us.
You had pretty much the same sound, though, that was kind of like I don't know, I listened to the first one. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Love and Spoonful, where I had kind of a combination of folk and blues, and it was pretty much the same thing you guys did too?
But maybe a little more. It was maybe weirder.
So, is this why a new Heavenly Blue breaks up? Because you recorded 2 albums, neither one of them really did that well in the sales department, and you guys decided to kind of go off in a different direction, or what happened?
That was partly it, but I think the biggest thing was the drummer in the band was a guy named Peter Bonesteel, and even though Peter Bonesteel and Chris Brubeck were roommates all through high school at Interlochen, Chris realized that he really wanted a better drummer in the band. So we got a second drummer, a guy named Richie Morales. And so New Heavenly Blue for a while had 2 drummers. And then Chris had this opportunity to go off and accompany a folk duo called Addison Crowfoot for half a year. So he quit New Heavenly Blue, and the whole band fell apart. He went off, and there was this other band started called the Sky King Blues Band, and I was in that band, and the same guitar player from New Heavenly Blue named Dave Mason was in the band, and Richie Morales was in the band, and Chris Brown, the bass player from New Heavenly Blue, was in the band. And so we had this new band for the summer, and that was the, I'm trying to remember what year that would have been. It would have been 1974, I guess.
So you guys, was that a band that kind of basically just played around Ann Arbor? Or?
Yeah, just right.
But you could, in those days, you could make at least a living, playing live in a band? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and so then Chris Brubeck comes back. He becomes the bass player in that band, and Chris Brown, the bass player, went to play string bass in the Detroit Symphony. so then we had this new band, and we got a friend of ours that said, "This is a great band. We should get a record." And we made a demo tape, and he took it to Steve Cropper in Memphis, and Steve Cropper said, "Yeah, this is a great band. Come on down to record some tunes in my studio in Memphis." And so we did, and those demos got sold to Columbia Records. So here we are. I'm still in my 20s. I'm on my 3rd major label album. It's like, what?
That's wild.
But hey, so we had the Sky King record in, and we had this record deal. They said, we'll definitely put out two albums. So the first one came out, and we did a tour all over the United States playing songs from the first album. And then said, well, it's time for the next one. And they kept stalling until the band, we weren't making any money. The band fell apart. So.
Okay.
The album never came out?
The second album never came out.
Sitting in the can somewhere?
Might be. But we don't have the tape.
Interesting.
And so Chris then joined his brother's band, the Darius Brubeck Ensemble. And then I got invited to join the Darius Brubeck Ensemble. So Darius is Chris's older brother. He plays keyboards.
Okay.
And so I'm in that band, and now I'm part of a horn section because I was playing harmonica. There was a clarinet, a tenor sax, and Chris Brubeck playing bass trombone and harmonica, but we had 4 horns, and we did horn parts, and I was learning so much. I never had played any jazz or horn parts or anything. I felt like I was really out of my league, but I was trying my best not to get thrown out of the band, so I woodshedded like crazy.
So what did you have to do in your harmonica that was different playing horn parts? I mean, it still sounded like harmonica, right?
Yeah, it did sound
Yeah,
like
okay.
harmonica, but it wasn't just, 3 chords and the truth anymore. It's like way more complicated, and so I had to learn how to. And these harmonicas I'm playing are diatonic harmonicas. They're tuned to one single major key, although you can get more than one key out of one of those harmonicas, but they don't have all the chromatic notes. A chromatic harmonica does with the button on the side, but I don't play that one very well. But I learned how to switch harmonicas very quickly. Well, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Whoops. There's one harmonica now.
Aren't harmonicas like over $50 now?
Oh, yeah. They are.
Jeez.
They were, when I started, they were $2.25. And so you could either buy 2 harmonicas or 1 LP for $5.
Yeah.
So anyway, I learned how to switch harmonicas very quickly.
Wow.
And so I could get the notes that were missing
Wow.
as the bands would progress from one chord structure to another. And so I was playing with that band for a while. And then we'd be opening act for the Dave Brubeck Quartet in various places around the country, which was pretty amazing. And then at one point, I guess, I don't know what year it would have been, 1975 or 76, Dave Brubeck disbanded his quartet and just used the Darius Brubeck Ensemble as his backup band, and that was called Two Generations of Brubeck. And I played with that band for 5 years.
Wow. Okay.
And then I was traveling all over the country and all over the world. Played in Canada and Mexico, and we played in Australia and New Zealand and Germany and Holland. And
So that takes you into the 1980s then?
it took me up to about 78, I guess. So maybe 75 to 75, 66, 77, 78, but 79 maybe. But it was 5 years with playing with those guys.
So I'm not sure when Dave Brubeck's career ended. Is in that realm there?
No, well, he kept playing until he died in 2010 or 2012.
Oh, okay.
or something.
Gee. All right. Yeah.
But he wasn't, he was slowing down. He died at 94 years old or something.
How did you get involved with Blackfoot? That was in the 80s, right?
Beats me how I got involved with him. Someone said they need I guess it might have been Al Nally Music, Rob Nally. I think he's the one that said Blackfoot needs a harmonica for a solo. Can you do it? And I said, sure.
Did you do that at Henry Weck's place? Studio?
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
Schoolhouse or
Yeah,
school?
yeah.
So your involvement with that band was just like one song?
Yeah, and in fact, I didn't
Okay.
even meet the band.
Oh, all right.
I played on their album, but I didn't meet the band.
Okay.
I met one guy from the band, I guess.
Ricky Medlock. Remember? Yeah. Neil Cassell, who went on to play some great guitar over the years, and he passed away of suicide a couple of years ago.
Oh.
He played in his first major thing was coming to Ann Arbor to play Ricky Medlock's Blackfoot in '88 or '87.
Mm-hmm.
So he came out here and got his start here. He was telling me about it years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I had no clue the Blackfoot had an Ann Arbor footprint. That's wild.
Yeah, so that was just a one-off
Okay.
recording thing. But
Now you had a more consistent relationship with the two brothers in Gemini.
oh yeah, I still play with those guys.
Did that start at the Ark or?
No, at Flood's, Mr. Flood's party in Ann Arbor. It was a great little bar.
Yeah, way up. The stage was way up
Yeah,
there.
way up. Tiny little place. But so after I was no longer in New Heaven, in Two Generations of Brubeck, they never actually ever fired me. They just stopped hiring me. used to be I'd just be at home, and in the mail I'd get a letter and it said, "Here's our itinerary, here's your plane tickets. We'll see you at the airport." And then I stopped getting those letters. It took me a couple of months to realize I wasn't in the band anymore.
Oh man.
So then I thought, well, now what am I going to do? Because from meeting Chris Brubeck up till then was almost 10 years, and I'd never had to try to get a gig myself. And I'd never had to book a gig or lead a band or anything. So, like, yikes, what am I going to do now? But I knew how to play folk guitar and I knew how to play harmonica. So I became a one-man band, put the harmonica around my neck and played the guitar and threw my head into the folk music arena because I knew how to do that. I knew how to play guitar and harmonica at the same time. And most people that play guitar and harmonica at the same time are much better guitar players and much worse harmonica players. But I was like the other way around. And so if I was playing guitar and I hit the wrong chord and they started going, "Oh, where's this going?" My harmonica knew how to follow the guitar, even though the guitar was taking me somewhere else. Just and I also lived, at the time, I lived about 3 blocks from the Ark Coffee House in Ann Arbor. And I'd go over there for hoot nights often. Maybe I might have met Gemini there. I might have met him at Floods. I don't know. It was back at the same time. And, Dick Siegel would play there too. And then all these folkies from all over the country would come and play there. And I'd go over in the afternoon when they arrived and say, "Hey, want some harmonica backup?" And they'd say, "Well, let me hear you play." And I'd play, and they'd say, "Okay, yeah, you can." So Rosalie Sorrells and Paul Jeremiah and Paul Siebel and, I'd back up David Bromberg. I'd back up people at in the folk music world. And then this one guy named Bob White said, "I'm going on a little tour of the Midwest, but I don't have a car. But you have a car, so why don't you be my driver and harmonica player, and I'll pay you." And so, sure, So I went on this little tour. And on that tour, he explained to me how you get a gig outside of your hometown. And he said, "Yeah, well, you get a compact cassette, you get a 8x10 glossy black and white photo, and you get Xerox copies of any review you might have had. and a cover letter and put them all in an envelope. And here's a list of people you can send them to. So great. I started sending those around. And I started getting music playing at folklore societies around Michigan and Wisconsin and Illinois.
Wow.
And I did that for a while. And
Was that around 1980?
yeah, that was in the 80s. Right?
Yeah. So
Weren't you
press
teaching in
kits.
the schools too,
Oh,
or was that later? Or?
No, it was at probably the same time in the 1980s. I found out that elementary schools were hiring musicians to play school assemblies, and I had by then I had a little PA system, and I started doing that, and it actually paid very well to go into a school and play a school assembly, just all these American folk songs. And so during the 80s, I did lots of those.
Did you work with the kids too? You know, was there like a, you know, you'd do a show or like a little concert, and then did you have was a workshop with kids? Was that part of it or no?
Occasionally, but usually it wasn't. Usually I'd have a question and answer thing going on. And other than that, it just... And then I met a lot of other people that were doing those school assemblies, and we got to talking, and they'd give me ideas about what they were doing and leads on what schools were hiring. And so during the 1980s, I did loads of school assembly programs. And I also, most of the people I was talking to that did these shows, it's, elementary schools are great, but the junior highs are really rough because in the elementary schools it's, yeah, we want to hear it. But in the junior highs, I'm not sure if I'm going to like this. But I had my secret weapon. I had an electric guitar.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a little fuzz tone. And the first song, hi kids, like put the distortion on high and get their attention, and then I could play whatever I wanted after I won them over.
Amazing.
Yes, I spent my career working with junior high kids, so I know where you're coming from there.
It's such just 6th grade to 7th grade. It's just, yeah, we'll love it until I'm not sure if we're gonna like this.
Oh, man.
Was it at that time that you wrote this song about going to Chicago and every exit?
Oh yeah,
you wrote it. Who had real cream and stuff at the restaurant?
Yeah, right. Because my parents still lived in Chicago, and I had musician friends there that I could work with, and I was going back and forth between Ann Arbor and Chicago so often that.
I remember that because we used to do that a lot with Lazy Lester, and I remember your song, and I'd go, yeah, well, let's get off at that exit.
Yeah,
they have cream.
Yeah, they have cream. They have real cream for their coffee instead of artificial cream. Yeah.
When did you meet Sherry Kane? Is that a little later?
I met her first, not through music, but a meditation group. Actually, I met her in 1977 or 78 or something.
Really?
But it wasn't and I knew she played guitar. And once in a while, I'd do a little jam with her or something. But it wasn't until 1990 that I had a duo with a drummer from Chicago named Ruben Alvarez. Oh, and Ruben and I would do assembly programs in Chicago. So we hooked in there and did a ton of shows together. I'd play harmonica and guitar, and he was a drummer, and he played drum set and all this Latin percussions and bells, and it was a fun little show. And I booked Top of the Park Ann Arbor, Michigan Summer Festival and he was going to come, and then his car broke down the day of the show, and he calls up and said, "My car broke down. I can't make it." I said, "Okay," but I had this gig, and I called up Sherry Kane and I said, "Do you want to?" Because we jammed a little bit. I said, "I'm in a bind. You want to play some guitar?" And she came in. It just went really well, and the audience liked it. And she said, "Wow, what would it take to play more gigs like this?" And I said, "Well, we'd have to know more than 5 songs."
When did that record come out, or the CD on School Kids? 93 or something like
Yeah,
that?
probably about then. Yeah.
I think it was like the 5th or 6th release.
Oh, really? That early? Wow. Yep. So then we had. So all during the 90s, in fact, Sherry and I played pretty much full time for 24 years,
Yeah.
1990 to 2014.
Now, did you play mostly in the Midwest, or did you travel beyond?
Yeah, we traveled beyond. We mostly in the Midwest, but we did shows from New York to Florida to Texas.
Okay. Wow.
And then we met up with Marty Salzman, who Fred mentioned earlier, who was Junior Wells's manager for a while, and he was what else did he manage? Forgetting his name, something Slim, Magic Slim.
Oh.
And he said he got us a gig in Brazil. So whoa! So sure, we'll go to Brazil. So we went to a blues festival in Brazil, and played that. And then 2 years later, we got invited to another blues festival in Brazil. So
Really?
went down to Brazil, and on my first trip to Brazil, I met some harmonica players down there. And so 2 years later, when I was going back to Brazil, I contacted those harmonica players and said, "I'm coming back to Brazil, and maybe I can see you guys again." And one of them sent me a fax. I don't have a fax machine anymore, but back then I had a fax machine. And he didn't have a fax machine, but he worked in a record store that had a fax machine. So he sent me this fax and said, "Well, if you come to Brazil, I have a friend that is a great blues guitar player, and maybe you can do a gig with him." I faxed him back and said, "Sure, I'll be happy to." So I went to Brazil with Sherry. We did this blues festival. And then I went to Rio de Janeiro and met up with this blues guitar player, and we did some gigs. And those went so well that his name was Big Joe Manfra. And he arranged for me to go back and tour with his band 11 more times. So
Really?
altogether, I've done 13 tours of Brazil.
So was he singing in, I'm turning this to Portuguese?
He was singing in English poorly.
Oh, okay.
But when I would be in his band, I'd be the singer.
Didn't you do an album with them?
Yeah,
or?
we did an album. Yeah. Right, which was released in Brazil and sold pretty well in Brazil.
How about Bootsy Collins?
That was
Bootsy.
another thing where I never met him at all.
Okay.
Someone said, "Hey, Bootsy needs a harmonica on this cut. Can you do it?" And I said, "Sure, I can do it." So.
But you also recorded later, though, with George Clinton, right? Did you?
No, I didn't. I
Okay.
never met George Clinton. I never met Bootsy Collins.
But you appeared on one of his albums?
I think so.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, the technology now, when you don't have to be in the studio with somebody anymore, to record things.
That might have been a connection through Maruga Booker.
Maruga.
Yeah, because he played with George Clinton, and
Right.
I think maybe something recorded at Maruga's studio got on a George Clinton record or something.
Oh, okay.
You recorded with Marunga, didn't you?
Oh yeah, lots of things.
Yeah, I did one thing. He needed a washboard.
Hmm.
He goes, I need a washboard. So I came over and did something. And when he played it back, he fooled around with the knobs. What happened to the washboard? I mean, it sounded completely different. He did something electronically to it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even recognize it.
Yeah, that sounds like something Murray would do.
And that'll be the end of part 1 here in the MMHP in the 989 with Peter Madcat Ruth. Join us again in 2 weeks where we pick up where we left off, and we take off on the second half of Peter Madcat Ruth's astounding harmonica and solo musician, acoustic based, and all over the map Ann Arbor man musician career. We want to thank him dearly for coming up to our show and being a part of it. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks.
On behalf of our hosts, we would like to thank the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame, our guests, and especially our listeners. The MMHP is found on the 989 network, as well as all familiar podcast hubs. Up-to-the-minute information, as well as Dr. J and Sir Fred's Michigan Music Songs of the Week, can be found on the MMHP's Facebook page, /MMHP989. You can connect with Scott at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, and Mr. Mike on YouTube as MRBTEE1.
And on behalf of Dr. J, Sir Fred, Mr. Mike, and myself, Scott Baker, we would like to thank